All right, let's talk about John Green's Looking for Alaska. This was his first novel, right? Dropped back in 2005, and it just completely took over. It's one of those books that sticks with you, you know? So today, we're going to get into it. We're going to deconstruct this modern classic and really dig into some of the uncomfortable truths that make it so powerful. So let's just dive right in with a big one, the question that really drives this whole story. Is there beauty in brokenness? I mean, think about that for a second. It's a heavy question, right? And it's exactly where this novel is going to take us. And yeah, Looking for Alaska doesn't just, float this question out there. No, it grabs you by the collar and forces you to really confront it. The whole book just dives headfirst into this really messy, uncomfortable idea of romanticized pain. And that's exactly where we're going to start. So, our story starts with this search, this quest for what the main character calls the Great Perhaps. So, what exactly is the Great Perhaps? Well, it's that feeling, that itch for something more, for something unknown, exciting, and just meaningful. And it's that exact feeling that pushes our main character, Miles Halter, to pack up his boring life and head off to Culver Creek boarding school. And the guy leading us through all this is Miles Halter, who gets the nickname Pudge almost immediately. And listen, he's not your typical hero, okay? He's pretty quiet, kind of introverted, and he has this weirdly specific hobby. He's obsessed with famous last words. But that's what makes him so relatable, right? His total honesty as he's thrown into this world that is just way, way bigger than anything he's ever known. All right, so Miles gets to this new school, and his whole world doesn't just get bigger, it basically finds a new sun to orbit. And her name is Alaska Young. Okay, so this is your core group, the Culver Creek crew. You've got Pudge, who's basically your eyes and ears, the observer. Then there's his roommate, the Colonel. He's the brains and the loyalty of the operation. And then you have Alaska. She's not just a friend, she's the catalyst, the one who sets everything in motion. And you can really see the tension here, right? On one side, you have the Colonel. He's all about strategy, loyalty, responsibility. He's grounded. And on the other side, you have Alaska. She's pure impulse, total mystery, completely reckless. And poor Pudge is stuck right in the middle, pulled between this need for stability and this insane attraction to chaos. And from Pudge's point of view, Alaska is just a force of nature. She's brilliant, she's funny, she's completely magnetic, but she's also wildly chaotic and seems to keep everyone at a distance. And that's really what the whole first half of the book is about, isn't it? It's about building this myth of Alaska Young, this amazing, untouchable, and, deeply, deeply broken person. And all of this leads us to what is probably the most famous thing about this book, its structure. The whole story is literally cleaved in two. You have the before and you have the after, and it all hinges on one single catastrophic event. So, in the before part, everything feels kind of like a classic coming-of-age story, right? You've got the friendships, the pranks, the late-night talks, and of course, Pudge's growing romantic fantasy about Alaska. But then, the after, and it's like you're reading a completely different book. It's all about the fallout, the grief, the guilt, and this desperate, desperate search for truth. This isn't just some clever literary gimmick, It's so much more than that. That split in the book, that before and after, it perfectly mirrors the emotional fracture that the characters themselves are going through. For them, life is never going to be the same. Everything is now defined by what happened. And in the after, the big question of the book completely changes. It's no longer, how do I find her great perhaps? Now it's, how do we escape suffering? This is the question that just haunts them. They're not looking for adventure anymore. They're just trying to figure out how to survive something that feels completely unbearable. Okay, so this brings us to the uncomfortable truths. Because now the book has a new job to do. It has to start deconstructing the very same fantasy it spent the entire first half building. And believe me, this is where things get brutally honest. So how does it dismantle this fantasy? Well, it happens at a few stages. First, the book forces Pudge and us to see that there is absolutely nothing beautiful or poetic about real pain. It's just ugly. Then it dives into this idea of living with guilt that you can't just wish away. And finally, it gets to this huge idea that you don't escape suffering. The only way out of the labyrinth is to find some kind of meaning right there in the middle of it. And this right here, this is probably the book's most important argument. It is a direct takedown of that whole manic pixie dream girl or tragic beautiful girl trope.
The book is screaming at you that Alaska's self-destruction is not poetic, it's not romantic, it's just a tragedy, a devastating, heartbreaking tragedy. So, after all that, what's the final verdict? What makes this book stick around after all these years?
I think this really nails it. On the surface, Looking for Alaska looks like a love story, but that's just a disguise. When you really get down to it, what this book is a grief story. It's a raw, unfiltered look at what it's like to try and put yourself back together after the world falls apart.
And maybe this is the real magic of the book, why it's so enduring. It's a novel that actually grows with you. You know, the stuff that seems so romantic and exciting when you're 16. Well, you read it again when you're 25 and it just hits different. It feels sobering. The book doesn't change, but you do, and so your understanding of it deepens.
And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. The best stories, the ones that really matter, they don't just give you a good time for a few hours. They stick around. Their meaning changes and deepens as we change. So I'll leave you with this question. What are the stories that have grown with you?